Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, whatever part of the world you are tuned in from. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth, July 13th, 2021. This is episode 117. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time, there's only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. We do buffalo sauce. We do comedy. I don't know how much buffalo sauce this guy had in prison, but he's out now. We're here to talk about comedian Bill Cosby and the overturn of his conviction. And to do that, I have on comedian and political guy Bruce Chester. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dennis. Nice to be here.
Well, thank you for being on. And we originally did a podcast about Bill Cosby discussing all his troubles that led to him being in jail. And I left off that podcast with a jury of his peers heard all the evidence in the case. They found him guilty, and he will spend the rest of his life in jail. And as we know, he spent 3 years in jail. And a few days ago, Philadelphia's highest court overturned that conviction on a technicality, and he is now a free man. What was your reaction when you heard that news?
I was very surprised, and he's actually only in jail for 2 years, which I was surprised because it was a 3 to 10 year conviction, but the man's 83 years old, so it might as well have been a life.
At 83, that was a life sentence.
Yeah, pretty much. I was very, very surprised. It came out of nowhere. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw that this was going to happen. However, I'm looking back, I'm not surprised, and I'll tell you why. I remember when everything went through, because as most people know, I was a huge Cosby fan since I was a kid. Everybody was. Everybody loved Cosby, from Fat Albert to Pudding to
greatest comedy albums of all time.
Yeah, really, and they're still hysterically funny. But if you also remember, I also said that Cosby's sexual appetite was Hollywood's worst kept secret. I remember saying, and I've said this to other people, that if a black kid from in the '80s from Central Massachusetts knows about it, I mean, who wouldn't, right?
Yeah, right.
Although there was a time where Cosby actually had acknowledged that problem and then turned around. So the early '70s actually tried to do better by his wife and his family. When they in the technicality, they say there's two. In reality, there's only one. The one that people keep bringing up that wasn't really a technicality was the promise or the deal from a previous. I don't remember his name. I remember, previous prosecutor. I remember his first name is Bruce, and why not? But that he wouldn't be prosecuted, then turn on prosecuted. Okay, that promise was empty.
They thought because he retired, and the new prosecutor said, "Hey, I didn't make that deal with him," but it was still legally binding because he took that office, made the deal.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could look at it that way. I don't because it was a new guy. I didn't think he was actually bound by that deal, because I'm not sure it's a deal that legally could have even been made. Right. But then again, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. So
I've heard of you can testify under immunity. I've heard of that before.
Oh yeah.
They'll let your small crime go to get to a bigger crime. So
exactly,
they'll give you immunity to get to the bigger guy. Yeah.
Right. But what really sank that case was the fact that they brought in so many other, I think it was 5 other women accusing Cosby of the same crime, and they actually allowed them to testify. Now I'm not a lawyer, but I know that's a recipe for disaster, because those cases were not the cases being tried. And when you're trying to color a case, or these people, they all, I guess, met Cosby, so I think they were trying to do like a character witness. But at the same time, their testimony was taken as testimony against Cosby for a crime that he was not being tried for. He was being tried.
You think it should have been individual? They should have tried it individually. You think?
Well, yeah. If they would, Cosby would never see the light of day.
Okay.
That's the problem. The problem is that they took unrelated people to this particular incident.
Right.
I mean, if it was a class action suit against Cosby, where what was Andrea? What's her name? She was a student, a player, whatever. Let's say she's a athlete, manager, whatever, and there are other staff people at the same time during in the same environment. Then yeah, I could see them coming in to testify. Yeah, he did that to me. Yeah, I can back that up. He did that to me. So I get, but they didn't do that, and I said that's a bad situation. I mean,
anybody who met Cosby could have jumped on if they were money hungry. They could have jumped anybody,
and they have.
On, right?
They've actually done that. Cosby's been blackmailed over stuff he actually didn't do, because he had that reputation in not so many circles where it would have been easy to make him pay, and he actually did pay. But then he turned around and went to the FBI, and they shut it down and got his money back or whatever. Okay. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if I keep saying I get in trouble for this. People say I say if he's guilty, and it's kind of like, well, oh yeah, he's guilty, and it's kind of like, well, if he was guilty, I mean, there's a lot more going on here than just. I think just
Cosby.
Cosby.
Know if he's guilty. The two people in the room. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. So,
what do you believe? Right.
Right. Now I know. I mean, it's obvious he has a problem. It's obvious
say
that
overwhelming evidence, right?
Right. Yeah. So it really should have been. Let's say in a different dimension, Cosby got off. He never went to jail at all. Either way, it still should have been a wake up call for him. I think people are really upset. Oh, he's out. He's this, he's that. It's like the man's 83 years old now, and his reputation and his legacy is absolutely destroyed.
Destroyed, right?
It is absolutely every honor he had, every accolade, everything has been taken from him.
Sure. Every college you gave him, honorary doctorate.
Yeah, they took it back. They disavowed him. He's not even allowed on campus. So now, at this point, my personal opinion is you might as well let sleeping dogs lie. You'll be lucky if he survives another trial, if they can get it. I mean, the state of Pennsylvania, from what I understand, from what I've heard of, has decided not to.
Yeah, that was part of the thing that he wasn't allowed to be tried again, but that's only in Philadelphia. Now, other states,
that is possible.
Could, right.
Yeah. But I think that even, whether he's in jail or out, there's nothing he's going to be able to really do other than just retire and disappear. That's all he can do now. There's no venue anywhere that's going to say, oh yeah, let's have Cosby perform.
Yeah, he can't do TV or nothing like that.
Can't do any of it.
Live shows, possibly. I mean, he's still got some people who supported him, so he could do.
That's true, but it's. I mean, in the business, he's become box office poison.
I saw
nobody's going to go near
jail. There were people in the middle of a show just shouting out, and they had to escort him from the theater. You're a rapist or whatever, and they had to stop the show and take him out. So
right.
It was a mess beforehand. Right?
It was terrible. But like I said, I mean, it's beyond. I mean, there's no going to jail would be pretty much a waste because there is nothing he's going to be able to do other than just live out the rest of his life in pretty much obscurity. And it's sad.
What most people are saying, okay, and I'll get your reaction to this, is getting off on a legal technicality is a far cry from saying the man's not guilty. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I look at it this way. We don't have a perfect system, but it's the best in the world. Stuff's going to happen. I mean, there are people that do get convicted for things they didn't do. That's nobody can really ignore that fact. Where it's like this, I think that really the prosecutors are the one that should be criticized and punished. They botched it. They messed it up. They did something they shouldn't have done. And it would, let's say Cosby wasn't Cosby. Let's say he was a rapist. Let's say he was, a rapist. I mean, not a rapist, but a serial killer or a murderer or something, where he's been a career criminal and he gets off in a technicality. Okay. It's happened in the past. It doesn't happen as much, I don't think, anymore.
The alleged O.J. Simpson trial.
I got my opinions on that. Maybe that's a different show, but
that's a different show. We'll stick to Cosby for now. Okay.
Stick to Cosby for now, right? But it's shame on the prosecutors. Shame on them for not doing what they were supposed to be doing.
On the flip side of saying getting off on a legal technicality doesn't mean he's not guilty.
True.
Then, if you go to Bill Cosby's social media accounts, he's going crazy claiming his innocence, saying we maintain our innocence the whole time. We never wavered. He did his time like a man. And he says he's telling people, go back and read the court transcripts, okay? If you
Mhm.
read the court transcripts, okay, he was asked, have you ever given a woman drugs in hope to have sex with them? And he said, yes. Now, saying that is a far cry from saying I drugged women to have sex with them, you know?
Mhm.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, if you go out for drinks with a woman and you buy her a beer, you know, and you're thinking, hey, I wonder maybe, you know, if we'll
Yeah.
have sex later, that's a far cry from slipping something in her beer and drugging her to
Yeah.
have
Without
sex.
her knowledge. Yeah.
What's your response to that? What Cosby's saying?
Um, you have to remember, I mean, Cosby has been such a staple in American society that they tend to forget that he's been around a long time in the world. We are all products of our formative years, and sometimes our formative years go well into our 20s. I'm a child of the 80s. I love 80s music. I love big hair. I love the look. Because that was when I discovered life.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
was when you explored your youth, right?
yeah, exactly. And we're all like that. My dad was the same way. He was a child of the 50s, when
Oh,
he
yeah.
loved the stuff from the 50s. People love stuff from the 70s. And that's normal. That's a normal human reaction. Cosby isn't any different. But the problem with Cosby is that he's basically a child of the 60s, if you will, the 50s and the 60s. And the reason why his formative years lasted longer is because at a young age, he went from being somebody who's obscure to somebody who's very famous very quickly. I'm not saying he was an overnight sensation. He wasn't. But at the same time, he was a lot of firsts. He was the first Black person to win an Emmy for a leading role. That's historic. And there's a lot of momentum, political, I should say political, but a lot of influential momentum that comes with that. And when you're used to having that kind of power over people, where people, he could say, "Get me a taco," and he's got 16 different tacos in his face in 10 minutes. It's
Yeah.
hard to adjust down from that. I'm not saying,
You
again, I'm
live a
not
different
absolving.
lifestyle than most people do, right?
Yeah, yeah,
They
it
say
was
that
not a
about
normal
athletes too. They're so used to having, everything
whatever.
covered up for them that
Yeah,
becomes a lifestyle, right?
well, I'm not necessarily talking about things being covered up. I'm just talking in general. I mean, and people haven't changed. I mean, Justin Bieber. I mean, all this stuff where people are more about the image than they are about the craft. Then you're going to have that problem there. That's why you wonder. I mean, in my opinion, every actor should be able to do film, television, and theater. In reality, that isn't true. Some people can do film and television very well, but they suck on stage, and vice versa. You've got actors you've never heard of that are superstars on stage, and because that is their best place to be as far as
Their
their
strong
craft
point,
and talent.
right?
That's a strong point, right? So with Cosby, I believe that he got so ingrained. It was easy to do in the 60s, where because I mean they don't even have quaaludes anymore. You can't even get them. They're not even
You
available
mentioned that
anymore.
on the first podcast that this
Yeah.
was a common thing, trying to drug women's drink back in the 60s.
Well, it was a common thing where it was consensual because everybody was doing drugs. I mean,
Right.
drugs were not. And here's the thing, though. What people don't realize is that anything in pill form in the 60s was considered respectable. So you weren't on in these opium dens where people were smoking or shooting up or snorting stuff.
Okay.
If you were in a group and they were popping pills, there was no stigma there.
It was a
Okay,
normal activity. Yeah.
it was, yeah, because it was, they figured it was because they thought it was safe, because it was manufactured. It was something that normal people use,
Right.
like Valium. But we now know, but even those, I mean, you can get stiff on cough syrup if you really wanted to, and
Right.
that you can still get that over the counter. So the attitude towards those types of substances was very, very different. So, and I think the problem is that Cosby developed a pattern of behavior that nobody called him on as times changed through the 70s. I mean, I'm not saying he was doing it every day. Matter of fact, he probably did it once in a blue moon, but it was still, it doesn't
Well,
matter.
he
It was
wasn't
still
the only
associated.
guy doing it, but he was the famous guy. So he's the one you heard
Exactly.
about.
Yeah.
Everybody was
Oh, I'm
doing it,
sure
but they
there's plenty
weren't
of other famous. Yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of other famous people that did it, but realized
Yeah.
over time that it was a bad idea
Right.
because they didn't have the kind of influence Cosby had. I mean, if they were a has been, they're lucky if they can, stuff a cup of coffee down somebody's throat. Never mind get them to, get them in bed with some Quaaludes. But again, because you had a lot of young people into that, especially,
Well,
they
his
weren't
wife
poor.
Camille, what's his wife's name?
Camille, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
She said these women knew that they were taking the pills. That they knew it was. That's her.
Well, yeah. She was probably as desensitized as Cosby was, which is unfortunate because I can't really understand why. I mean, you would think that he's Cosby. If he wanted sex with somebody other than his wife, he could get it fairly easily. But again, that's why I believe it was a pattern of behavior more than it was just, oh, he's this huge monster that preys on women. It's kind of like, well, I think it's more he has this thing that he does that in his mind is perfectly acceptable.
Right.
And it's not, obviously. I mean, we change
right.
our behavior as our culture changes.
Back then, it was a gray area, where today it's not a gray area. Right?
Exactly. Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So now, how many accusers was it that was accusing him at the peak of the thing? I mean, it was.
I think about 50, around 50 accusers. Yeah.
All right. Now, a lot of these accusers were in states where the you have time limits, and the time had ran out, so even they
statute of limitations. Yeah.
Statute of limitations, they couldn't bring it against him. Now, they had some sort of victory when he was found guilty on these, and I can't try him, but he's found on others. So.
Yeah.
What do you think their response is to that after they heard?
Oh, they're livid. I'm sure each and every one of them who are livid because now let's say for a moment that the question of his guilt with these women is still up in the air, but in their eyes he did it. Okay, so let's just assume he's guilty. They're upset because now their vindication has been taken from them,
and then they have their justice because the statute of limitations are out, right?
Right. So they feel doubly screwed.
Okay.
So that's how I would view it. At the same time, if there are a good percentage of them that were put up to it, where maybe they never even did it.
Now they're thinking I ain't gonna get no
consensual.
money out of this, right?
Exactly. They're not going to get any kind of They're going to if people look deeper into it, they may find out that they lied.
Right.
Okay. I'm not and for your audience, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Right,
okay?
right. So we're talking
Just
about both sides of it. We're not picking a side. We're
right. We're just saying that that's the possibilities, right?
So. Okay, so well, just a little bit more about you. I know you got your own podcast going on, and you got it in the background there. So tell people a little bit about what you got going on.
Well, last year during sort of at the height of COVID, I decided to run for office, and I figured I'm ex-military. I'm a veteran, so I'm accustomed to public service. And so I thought this would be another way I could actually help my community. So I ran for office. I met a friend of mine, Scott Graves, who's technically the liberal to my conservative, but we agree on more stuff than we don't agree.
Okay.
Which is the way it's supposed to be.
That makes for a good show, right?
It does. But we do talk about a lot. Our show's format is actually we start off. We try to do one local issue and discuss it, one national issue, discuss it. We did something a little bit different last week. Matter of fact, I'm recording tonight. We record every Tuesday, and then it comes out on Friday. And we actually did a debunking episode. So we found some historical facts because we both enjoy history. Sure. We did a few debunking of a few different things. He did a current.
I love the history of comedy, man. So you were at my alley.
Yeah. And then there was also I did a sort of a federal general one that has been something I've actually worked to debunk for many, many years. So
okay, so we can see part of the name behind you, but what's the name of the show?
Yep. The name of the show is On the Rocks Politica. It's
where can people where can they find it to tune in?
You can go to smgassociates.com. You can search on most podcast platforms. You may if you see Scott's On the Rocks Politica, it's the same show. It used to be Scott. There were actually two Scott Graves here in Gardner.
Oh, okay.
And they were it was kind of the gimmick because you had Scott Graves, the liberal, Scott Graves, the conservative. Unfortunately, Scott Graves, the conservative, is on. He has a law practice and he's on city council. So unfortunately, he couldn't make a regular commitment. So Scott had asked me to come in and take over for. That's why it's On the Rocks Politica instead of Scott's On the Rocks. That's why there's basically a glass of scotch behind there. That was kind of the in joke, but I said just make it On the Rocks Politica. That way you didn't have to change too much.
All right. Well, good luck with that podcast. And as I mentioned, we did an earlier podcast about Bill Cosby at the height of when he was getting convicted. And after it was done, one of the main things that the fans complained about that we didn't discuss was Cosby's son passing away and whether you thought this had anything to do with it. So let's get to that now. Do you think that had anything to do with what's going on?
That's a tough question because we don't really know what's going on in Cosby's head. I mean, to lose a child, I've never lost a child.
Right.
I am a
I
father.
can't even
I have a
imagine.
wonderful child.
Yeah.
She's an adult now, so she's done wonderful, great things, and I'm super proud of her. So I can only imagine what he went through when that happened. And not only that, he originally had 5 kids. He's now down to 3 because one of his daughters has actually passed away. I think from liver cancer. She passed away right as he went into jail, or right as this is all going on. He actually suffered the loss of another child. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's kind of why I think Cosby's relatively.
I mean, you love your
quiet.
children. Obviously, your children are your children. But, I mean, if you're a man and you have a son, you can relate to him better than you could a daughter. And if you're a mother, you can relate to a daughter better than you could a son. But they're your children no matter what. But this was his only son, I think. He's got a few other daughters, but it was his only son. So that had to mess with his head. So
I think it did. I think it hit him hard. I mean, I know when I lost my father a few years ago, it hit me pretty hard.
Okay.
Because he died by accident. It wasn't, a long, because I had time to say goodbye to my mom because she died. She actually was dementia. So I kind of mourned her a lot earlier than her actual passing. But I mean, people do it differently.
But everybody would say you can't use that as an excuse to, do things like rape a woman. Okay. I mean, if your son passed away, you're depressed, you're down, you do something stupid. That's not an excuse to do bad things. On the other hand, if you've ever dealt with mental illness, people don't think normal ways. Okay. So if you're suffering from mental illness, you're doing things that seem normal in your head, which would seem, insane to other people. So you think that might have been a part of it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mental illness, especially if you have mental illness and then you have a traumatic event happen. Oh my gosh, it's boggles the mind. My wife and I was actually surprised. We watch a TV show called Hoarders on A&E. I don't know if you've ever seen this show.
No.
Well, you know what a hoarder is. A hoarder is,
I know what a hoarder is.
Pack rat or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard of the show.
Yeah. If you look at, I mean, I've been watching the show for a number of years. You've got people who go out and collect things. And it's weird because different hoards are different. Most of them are relatively have the relatively same stuff in them. But you have people who are food hoarders that will keep food and let it go bad.
Becomes a disease, right?
Yeah, and they don't even. It doesn't bother them.
It's normal to them, where you're looking at it like, what's going on?
They've adjusted their threshold so low that they won't something they can't. They literally, it's obviously they can't. It's covered in mold, or it's expired, it's dripping, it's nasty, it's gross. Doesn't bother them. They literally have adjusted their what's acceptable, their threshold so low. And that typically happens because they in something in their mind clicks as a trigger where they say, I don't, oh, it's just trash, I'll get to it later. And then 5 years goes by and the trash has hit the ceiling. Sometimes it literally wrecks the infrastructure of their house. There have been hoarders that have literally wrecked their own houses because they have some stuff in there, and they'll sleep in a corner on a ratty bed, a rat-infested bed, and you need
to find a way to deal with this, though. You can't use it as an excuse just to do things. We all have laws we have to live by.
Yeah, right. But people have excuses for all sorts of stuff. You will never find a serial killer that thinks they're a bad person.
Right.
They think that, well, I had to kill them because they were
people twisted around in their head. It's somebody else's fault, not mine. Right.
Right. It's somebody else's fault.
So you think Cosby might have thought that?
I think it's very possible. I think mental illness is no respecter of persons. I mean, you look at you have to first of all acknowledge there's a problem, and sometimes, and that's a problem. Mental illness is magnified in famous and influential people because the people around them won't address it for one reason or another. Either they're scared, or they're making a lot of money off of this person for some reason, or it runs a whole spectrum. I believe Cosby does have this mental illness, and it's never been checked, and he's never admitted or even realized. And I'm not. And there is a certain degree where you say, well, as long as they're okay with it,
That's
because a lot
half
of
the
people,
problem is getting people to admit they have a problem. Most people, they
exactly,
think it's normal. They won't
yeah,
admit it. Right,
exactly. I've been doing it for 40 years. Why should I stop now? I mean, nothing bad has come from it that they can perceive, but then, it all hits at once
they
and
got to
it's
pay the price once it
catastrophe.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, whether it's breaking the law or living in a very unhealthy or a very dangerous situation. I mean, humans can get used to anything. I'm ex-military. I was in Iraq for a year. Believe me, humans can get used to anything.
Right.
Okay, if they have to, if they don't see any other way out, they will just adjust
Your
up
mind will
here.
adjust to it. Yeah.
And yeah, it's a survival mechanism. It's kind of ingrained into us to survive, but it doesn't mean it's healthy or even necessary.
So mental illness might have contributed to what Cosby was doing.
I think it did.
Okay.
I think it did.
Now they can't retry him in Philly. They've already decided that. Do you think
Right.
other states like California? Do you think that they're going to go after Cosby now, or do you think, hey, they're going to let we've been down this path? They're going to let sleeping dogs lie?
I think that if they were going to go after Cosby, they would have already. They had him where they wanted him.
Do you think it's over? He's a free man. He's going to stay free.
Hard to. I think he'll end up staying free because it just isn't worth it. I mean, you're going to have people who. I feel for the victims, what real or perceived or however you want to, because they probably feel, unfairly treated.
Robbed of their day of justice, right?
Yeah, or it was.
But on the other hand, they had so many years to bring these charges and they didn't. They're the ones who let it expire.
Right, but that's tough though, because
it's normal. That's normal to not want to face your accuser.
Well, it's fear. We want women to come forward. I would always want a woman to, no matter who it is. I mean, it could be my greatest hero,
right?
Or even a family member. But if they've got a problem like that, but it's
tough to accuse anyone, especially somebody of Cosby's stature, right? Who's going to believe me over Bill Cosby? I'm sure.
Exactly. That again, it's fear that won't be believed, fear that I won't be taken seriously, and it's unfortunate that they felt that way. But you can't change the past, and you can't change the law just to accommodate a small percentage of people. That's just
sometimes victims will think, did I do something wrong? Was it my fault? Did I send out wrong signals? So you don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's a very difficult, and it will remain to be a difficult situation. There's no real answer to that. So
everybody's got their opinion. I mean, I don't think anything's going to change. You either think he's guilty or you don't. I don't think anyone's opinion is really going to change from this, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, mine did at first. I didn't think it was guilty at all, and now I think is that he had a negative behavior that went unchecked. I think it's mental illness that doesn't absolve. Even mental illness does not absolve from hurting another person or anyone. But at the same time, it's more than just, Bill Cosby is a monster. It's Bill Cosby has a mental illness. And
at the very least, he put himself into some bad situations, right?
Yeah. And that's the problem. People want to write off mental illness, and they shouldn't. I think that if anything positive should come from this, it's that, look, don't let the fear of retaliation prevent you from coming forth. Don't let, if you think somebody is doing this really negative behavior, even illegal behavior, and it's even somebody you care about, you got to get over that fear of that. I mean, his family knew, his wife knew. Okay. You can't tell me other people didn't know Cosby was doing this, but yet they didn't stop him. They didn't set him down and make him stop. They said, look, you have a mental illness. You have a problem that is going to get you in trouble. Nobody did that. And I do feel a little sad for Cosby.
But he's Bill Cosby. How do you talk to Bill Cosby? Man,
if you're Bill Cosby's wife, you say, sit down, shut up, and listen to me. Do what I tell you.
Cosby's not going to listen to his wife. You know that, right?
I don't know. I've met people who have met her out in Western Mass. Yeah. She's a formidable woman.
Is she? All right. Well.
Yeah, Camille's a formidable woman. Yeah, she's descended from Abraham Lincoln.
Sharp said, Shannon Sharp, famous football player, he said even when he's on the road, like if he's at a hotel and he's on an elevator and the elevator opens and a woman walks on, he walks off even if it's not his floor because he don't want to put himself in that position of being alone with a woman in an elevator. Okay, so at the very least, Cosby, he put himself in some positions he knew better than to put himself in, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't to say he knew better to put himself in that would be, if he knew better, he would have done it. That's the thing. He didn't know better. He didn't have that sensitivity, that understanding. And again, if it got to, I mean, we typically learn these things. I own a business where when we go to major events like a weekend sales conference, if you will, we typically do that. A leader, if he's with the wife of somebody he's working with, he makes sure the husband's there because they want to be. And this goes back to the 90s when I first got involved. It's important to maintain a proper boundaries. And these are people we loved, trusted, laughed with, traveled with, all this stuff. We always made sure that there was at least 3 people in counseling, unless it was 2 men and they had enough of a relationship. That was one thing, or 2 women. They had if it was mixed genders, it was always 3 people.
Always had to be a 3rd person.
Always had to be 3 people.
It's just common sense.
Well, it is common sense now. It wasn't common sense
back then, right?
70s, yeah. It wasn't common sense when Cosby was open to that. Right. Now that he's developed this habit, how do you get an alcoholic to stop drinking? He's
I've dealt with that. Yeah, my best friend. Yeah, I know. It's. Yeah, All right. So what they're saying now is now allegedly they're saying these women, they saw Bill Cosby, they saw opportunity to be on TV. They put themselves into, intimate situations, hoping to further their career. Now, from their side of it, he gave them some pills, drugged them and had sex with them. From his side of it, allegedly, was, hey, he gave them some pills to relax them. They took them willingly. He never forced them to take any. They got woozy and had sex with them. They're saying because of this now, that guys like Harvey Weinstein and other sexual predators, that they're now going to get off on technicalities. Do you think this is going to become a revelation where anybody who does this can get off on a technicality now? Or
no. Each case is different. It could be exact. I mean, even if Weinstein didn't drug any, he wasn't drugging people. He was just forcing people by violence. And I'm sure there are plenty of people that slept with Harvey Weinstein willingly,
hoping to further the career, willingly to hopefully further the career. But then when they didn't further the career, they felt bad for doing it afterwards, twisted around in their head. Oh, it has to be rape. Otherwise, I'm a whore, basically, right?
Basically, yeah. And there are a lot of people that didn't, I'm sure that didn't come forward. But again, there are a lot of people that did. And there's a lot of people. Courtney Love, of all people, back in the 90s, warned people about Harvey Weinstein. This is long before any of this stuff. It was just at the very beginning of the whole sexual harassment thing. Because if you're any kind of film or entertainment buff, history buff, you know that the casting couch has gone back decades.
Oh, sure, forever.
I mean, even Shirley Temple had stories, and she was
want to further your career,
she was 8 years old at the height of her career, and she had a movie executive exposing himself to her. She told that story years ago.
So this is the point. I mean, is that where the gray area is in this whole thing? Is it? I'm not forcing you to do this. If you want to force your career, I'm giving you a choice. Sleep with me. Now, if you willingly make that choice, you can call the creep and jump him. He's a creep every which way to sideways, but he didn't force you to do it. I bring it to Louis C.K., what he got accused of. Well, he asked the people, do you mind if I masturbate in front of you? They said, yes, he did it. So who's guilty there if he asked for permission? Now, you can say he's a creep, but did he do anything wrong? Isn't that the gray area? If these women sleep with these guys hoping to further the career, there's a gray area and, feel like a whore about it afterwards.
I'm not sure I'd call that a gray area. I'd call it a culpability, because if you're, how much better or worse a person are you? If somebody's wanting to sleep with you to advance your career, but they give you the choice, now, like you said, the ball's in your court. So now, how are you going to go back and say, well, this guy didn't sleep with me, or he did sleep with me in my career? Maybe you're just a terrible actress. Okay, if you're a terrible actress, your career doesn't go forward. Maybe somebody did do what they said they were going to do in exchange for sexual favors. Now, that whole process is reprehensible, but it happens. We all know it happens.
So who's to blame, do you think, in your opinion?
I think I would say, if I had to put blame on it, If the person had the choice, it's their fault.
Okay,
You
they
know?
had the choice.
If they
to
didn't
make it.
have the
Now,
choice,
some
or
of
they
these
were
accusers are
duped,
saying, though, Cosby didn't give them the choice. I saw one lady said, Cosby offered her some pills. She said, "What's these?" He said, "Oh, they're your friends. Just take them to help you." And she took them. And they're like, "Well, why would you take them if you know?" Well, I trusted him. I trusted him. Now, do you think if she trusted him to take the pills, is that her fault for putting herself in that position, or is it Cosby's fault for drugging her?
I well, it's her, depends on her attitude towards pills. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I mean, I have family members, or at least I that told me stories about family members that I haven't met, that died before I met them. That during a time where pills were popular, had a bread box full of prescription pills because they were easy to get.
Right,
Well, nobody made her take those. She liked to take those.
right.
So if she went to somebody's house and say, "Oh, I've got a headache," or she wanted to basically get high for whatever reason, and somebody has pills, she takes them. It's her responsibility. Taking pills or not, that's a definable, definitive action. You could be my mom or my dad, who I loved and trust immensely. If they say take a pill and they don't know what it is, I ain't taking it. It's just, I mean,
Really?
oh yeah,
Your own
no,
parents you
I
wouldn't
wouldn't.
trust to take a pill when you were a kid?
She told me what it was.
Yeah.
She always told me. I mean, I took chewable aspirin because I hated. To this day, I don't swallow pills. I have to swallow pills now, but I don't like. Never liked it. But if I did, everything being equal, it'd still be the same way. It would be, why it's like, well, mom, what's this for? And he says, well, you have this. This is for your headache. This is for your cold. It is cold medicine.
She didn't tell you they were happy pills. They'll help you, right?
Yeah. If they told me, oh, these pills are your friends, I'm gonna look and saying, it's like, if they're my friends, have them give me some money. I mean, I don't.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
Be my friend.
Can you imagine? Because
pay my rent.
just this podcast, we're going back and forth, and I'm like kind of leaning toward Cosby, then I'm kind of leaning toward the victim, and it's like, you don't know. Can you imagine these jurors just having to hear all this and decide guilt or innocence? Because it's like this.
Well, and that was the other problem, is because there was no media blackout for the jury. So that's another problem that all those guys are facing. I mean, I'm no fan of Harvey Weinstein. I'm not even really a fan of Roman Polanski, who the minute he steps out of Switzerland, they're going to nab him. But if
kind of what happened to Martin Scorsese, right?
What's that?
Kind of what happened to Martin Scorsese. He was hiding out in France, and he went to some awards banquet in Germany, and they nabbed him in Germany.
Oh, did they? Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, he had settled with the family years before that, and I don't know whatever happened.
Oh, okay.
I do remember they finally picked him up. Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility. Right. If you're taking something, if you're putting something in your body and you don't know what it is, come on, shame on you for not at least
in that position, right?
You put yourself in that position, you didn't ask. Okay. The only time I ate food, I didn't know what was in it when I was in Iraq, when there was nothing else. And I had, there I did have to trust the Army to say, okay, this is safe to eat. What is it? Just put some gravy on it. Yeah, but what is it? Just never mind. Put gravy on it and eat it. Okay.
What do you think, Bruce? What do you think it was, man?
Some type of egg product, I think it was. It was breakfast, so it didn't look like eggs. It was green, but green eggs and ham. But when you're talking, I mean, come on, it's not. I mean, during the 80s, it was just saying no. It was a big drug. At least an awareness of any type of drug that you take, whether it's a pill form, whether it's a smoke, snort, inject, whatever it is. Okay, you have to ask yourself, what the hell is that? Do I want this in my body if I don't know what it's going to do? It could be poison, could be rat poison for all you know. You could be dead inside of a couple of minutes if you take that. You don't know what.
So if you make a bad choice and do that, do you think that gives Cosby the right to take advantage of you, though? Because you put yourself in a bad.
No.
So anytime somebody puts themselves in a bad position, someone can take advantage of them, and it's okay.
Not at all. Not at all. No. Okay. Because then, see, it's like I said, it's about choice. You can choose to take advantage of that person, or not. And if you can't tell the difference, it's like, well, I want to have sex with this. I really like her, and she's completely passed out. Well,
well, she put herself in that position by taking the pills. So does that make it okay? So you can judge them obviously it's not okay. You can't have sex with a drugged out woman, but
or drunk.
Then you got to question. She put herself in that position, so that's the gray area, right? I mean,
Well, one bad decision does not.
Is it legal, I guess, is the question, okay? We know it's not moral. It's disgusting. It's an immoral act. But is it legal or illegal? I guess that's the real question, right?
Which part? Taking the pills or having the way with it?
Well, having their way with them and then saying, hey, she took the pills and put herself in a position, then the jury has
Again,
to decide
it's
which one they're going to go with.
Right. It's a definable act. So of course it should be illegal. No,
Right.
I mean, unless, I mean, I don't know about y'all. If I'm gonna, with my partner only, be with my partner only. I'm being very, very PG and G right now. If I'm gonna be with my partner, I'm just gonna be with my partner. I don't want her drugged. I want her awake. I want her, interactive.
Right.
You know, that's, I mean, for me as a normal, everyday, average person, I would not want. I mean,
I guess what I'm saying is this, Bruce,
illness.
okay? What I'm saying is this: if you get drunk and you drive your car and you hit another car and kill somebody, you don't get charged with murder; you get charged with manslaughter. Okay. So there's the difference. So do you think it's an excusable act because he was under the influence, or should it be murder no matter what?
It really should be murder no matter what, in my opinion.
It should be murder no matter what, but it's not. That's the law. It
depends on the state.
So the laws are kind of.
Yeah, it depends on the state. Some states that will be
vehicular. I know in Mass it's
homicide.
manslaughter because there was no intent to kill anybody. It wasn't my intent to kill anyone.
Yep. Sometimes it's second degree. Yeah, if there's no intent, it might be second degree murder instead of.
But he put himself in that.
But yeah, no matter how you slice it. I mean, the only time I feel if it's like if you accidentally and you're completely lucid, you're brain, you did something and you didn't realize it killed somebody, but it killed somebody. It's like, okay, that's involuntary manslaughter, but you should even, if you can prove that, then the guy shouldn't really be punished for something he did, because that wasn't even something he was trying to do. He was trying to do something else, and that's because that's a choice. It's a choice he made. To say, okay, I'm gonna fix this wall and make it better. And then, I hit a wall, it fell on, some rocks fell on, somebody killed it. Oh, I didn't, Right. It was not even remotely close to what he was trying to do. Versus when you decide, the minute you decide, whether it's pills, whether it's booze, you get behind the wheel of a car. That's a 2,000-pound weapon that you are now wielding while you're impaired. You shouldn't even do it if you're tired. I mean, I've had several driving jobs over my life. There were times where I literally got to a point I knew what my limit was. Middle of the day, if I hit that limit, I pulled over and I stopped. I found a rest area, a parking lot, whatever, someplace safe, and I took a nap.
So I guess we can say that Cosby put himself in a bad situation. The victims put themselves in a bad situation. Something bad happened. I mean, when you're both going to put yourself in a bad situation, something bad's going to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it could be, it's like texting and driving. I mean, if you're texting, or if your friend texts, I mean, there are dozens of these PSAs. England seems to be really graphic with these things. If you ever get a chance, go on YouTube and put in British driving and texting PSAs, see what you come up with. It's a horror movie because it's so realistic. And there was one where the girl who was driving and texting survived, but everybody else in the car died. Okay, there was another one where this one was just rear seatbelts, which is they had one for putting on your seatbelt in the back, and it starts off with you have the mother and you have the son. The son gets the back seat, mother's in the passenger seat, and they say this man is going to kill this woman. And what happened was that the kid in the back didn't put his seatbelt on when the mom did, and they stopped short. They hit something, and the kid in the back, his head drove through and basically smashed his mother's head, and somehow he survived, but the mother died. And literally, his weapon was his own head. Right, he didn't have a seatbelt on. Stuff like that. That's a choice. Putting your seatbelt on is a choice. Putting yourself in a vehicle, texting and driving is a choice, and you have to be held responsible.
There's so many technicalities, though. You don't know which way to go. But
there are.
Let's get back
to
Cosby
prove that
here.
in court of law too. That's the thing.
Now we mentioned Cosby's 83 years old. Do you think at that age, he wants to get out? He wants to tell people that he's innocent. I mean, he's already, like I said, on social media. Do you think at 83 he'll retire? Have we heard the last of Cosby, or do you think he'll tour? I mean, TV's not going to touch him, but I thought, imagine if Bill Cosby started a podcast, because anybody has access to the internet. If he started a podcast, how many people would tune in? Or do you think
a lot of people
would? Cosby, or do we got more to hear from him?
I don't think Cosby's quite done yet. If he's speaking out now, he's going to continue to speak.
Right. Yeah.
And I because now he has the platform, he has the ability. And now there's enough doubt in the process because Cosby's out that I think that I think he can gain some momentum. He'll never get back to where he was.
Oh,
I
no,
think
no,
podcasting and decentralized sort of non-con. I don't think he'll ever really perform again in a venue. He'll never be back on TV. But let me throw something out there that I mentioned it on the first Cosby show with you. That I found it interesting because there were a lot of things that had happened. One of the most significant was the fact, I don't know if you remember Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory was actually a popular comedian. He was actually a contemporary of Cosby in the late 60s and early 70s. They traveled around like comics do, like we do. And Dick Gregory actually said none of this about Cosby was true. They said there was a conspiracy. I don't know how true this is. I'm not saying this is true or not true. I'm just telling you what.
Right.
Gregory started going on online, not really in a podcast, but he was getting interviewed and he was on YouTube a lot. And he was talking about through the whole Cosby thing as it started to ramp up, how Cosby was being silenced because he wanted to buy NBC.
One of my next point I was going to make, so let's set it up. I mean,
go ahead.
You think this was a racial thing because he was setting up to buy NBC, and there's a conspiracy theorists out there who say they didn't want a black man owning a major television network, so they set him up to do this. Now, allegedly, they had an actress who was called in, and for the casting, they were saying, we want you to get to know Mr. Cosby. We're going to and we want you to get some of his semen for us. And she's thinking, you want me to get some of Bill Cosby's semen? She said she excused herself. She had to go to the restroom, went from the restroom to her car and left that meeting. Now, it was never proven. That was one of the alleged stories out there. So,
yeah. I mean, this
racism and his trying to purchase that was part of it or no?
I be prepared. Okay. I'm going to say no with a big asterisk. Okay. It wasn't about, they didn't care of Cosby's color. If Cosby was white and doing all the same things would have happened. And and this goes back to what Dick Gregory might have believed that it was a racial thing. I don't. If I'm going to go down the conspiracy route, I'm going to go down, because if you remember, before all this blew out, Cosby was doing a lot of speaking engagements at schools in different areas, talking about the things that are happening with blacks and the black father and the black community, where you had both blacks, whites. It wasn't the fact that they were the difference of color, but they were of a different political belief, where Cosby was in direct violation of that belief. I'm not saying Cosby is a conservative or a liberal. I'm not saying, whatever. What I'm saying is that Cosby was speaking out. He was talking. He said on more than one occasion that it is a fundamental crime, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact quote, but he says it's basically a real crime where black parents will spend $200 on a pair of new sneakers for their son. Specifically, he said son, so they can go out and play basketball, but they won't spend $50 on Hooked on Phonics to help them improve their education.
Right.
And and that was Cosby's tagline for a long time, that you are focusing. Hey, he was looking at talking to the black community, and he was saying, you guys are focusing on the wrong thing.
Right.
Basically saying that you need to get your kids. First of all, you need to stop attacking the black father and the family. You need to stop pushing your kids or keeping your kids in an environment where they're failing educationally. And he said it's the parents' responsibility to do that. And I've always believed that. I mean, my daughter was a straight A student. She graduated college with honors. And I think, not that I was constantly, I was not so much a helicopter parent, but I was definitely aware of my daughter's educational situation through pretty much her entire childhood, entire time in school. Not so much in college, because she was an adult. At that point, she was smarter than me anyway.
You hope you taught her well enough at that point, right?
Exactly. Okay. So, and as a teacher, and I've been a teacher in a lot of different situations, very difficult situations, that the success of a child, any child, black, white, it doesn't matter, is in their that child's success in school is directly related to the amount of involvement in child's education by the parents, whether it's one parent or both parents. There's a direct correlation. The parent is completely hands off and they don't care. The child will, there's the rare occasions where the child's just academically gifted and they'll just go ahead and get decent marks. 99% of the time, if the child is not doing well in school, it's because the parent is not putting enough emphasis on education. Okay. There are times where the parent does too much. Okay. And that also works negatively.
Works against them, right?
Right. So Cosby's thing was trying to get poor black families, poor black communities to say, stop erasing the black father. Okay. Which I guarantee you there's a political agenda out there doing that. And there's plenty of proof for it too, because that's how they control people. But at the same time, it's kind of like they got into the habit of the black father. If you listen to a lot of rap music, it's anti-woman, it's anti-family, it's pro-gang. I'm not saying all of it is, okay, but a lot of it that's popular is. They say, oh man, I got on, I went to the streets because the streets are cool and the streets are where you cut your teeth. And it's kind of like, yeah, but the streets aren't going to pay you.
That's what gets into your late 50s. Yeah. It's cool to be a gangster, right? It's cool.
Yeah. It's cool to be a gangster. And that's all they focus on. That is their future. And if you live beyond the age of the average gangster, which is about the age of 22, okay, you really don't have much to look forward to. You spend your life as a career criminal, or at some point in time, you clean yourself up and you dust yourself off and you change the direction life is going in. That's a lot. Cosby was all over that. He was all over that for years. Cosby had a PhD in education.
And they actually said that during his time in jail, he became a mentor to some of the younger prisoners. What do you think of that? I heard
that. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, that's what Cosby does. Cosby's been doing that for years. It's part of probably what helps him cope with a lot of the negative stuff that he's, maybe even it's a coping mechanism for his mental illness.
Right. With his son,
but yeah, I mean, it might be, due to the fact that he did lose his own son.
And you can say, hey, you don't want a rapist as a role model, but I mean, if you're in prison, everybody's done something wrong. That's all you got there, So I mean,
yeah, and you know what? And sometimes guys go to jail for things that they make that one mistake. Maybe they made that one bad decision, and it isn't always about every single guy in jail is this violent. I mean, there's a lot of them. Don't get me wrong, and they should be there. Right. But at the same time, if a guy goes in for assault because he got into a bar fight, maybe he was actually protecting a woman's honor for all you know.
We've all made mistakes in life. Some are worse mistakes, and you got to do time. But
yeah, and sometimes you get treated unfairly. That's life.
Yeah, it's good people who did one bad thing. Don't make them. Yeah,
exactly. So
human, but you got to pay your price.
You got to pay the price.
Rumor has it that Cosby left his Philadelphia home, and allegedly he went to his Massachusetts home. We don't know, but he left his Philadelphia home to go somewhere else. Why do you figure? Was he just getting away from the heat of that situation?
Oh yeah. If I were him, I would have got the heck out of that state. I wouldn't have been any faster. I would have been gone.
Yeah, right.
So yeah. It's pretty obvious he doesn't want to, because they know where he lives, and I believe he has like a really nice townhouse, or it's in a fairly densely populated area. I've seen his place in Greenfield. At least I've seen the property. I haven't actually seen. I think I saw the servant's house.
You think it was fear of being picketed, or fear of being re-prosecuted, or combination of both, or? I mean, they'll extradite you, I imagine, for that, so he can't really run anywhere. But I mean, just
I
get away from the heat of that situation, because that's where it was the hottest.
Yeah, I think they can't. Well, by law, by constitutional law, they cannot retry him for Andrea Constance's crime.
Right.
But if they can generate enough, if the statute of limitations in whatever state that's filing the charge, like say he comes back to Massachusetts, well, if he didn't do anything to anybody in Massachusetts, as long as he stays here, for the most part,
they could extradite back to Philly, couldn't they? Though, if they brought charges against him there,
it depends on how the state feels. When you get to that level, the state could say, no, we're not extraditing, or they may not even have an extradition agreement. Okay. the governor or the attorney general saying, you know what, Mr. Cosby is a legal resident. You're gonna leave him alone. Or they can say, nope, you can have him, take him whenever you want. I don't know. That's something that, um, the bottom line though with that is that they would have to have enough evidence and enough, um, they have to have enough material to create a trial. They have to build a
Don't make
case
the
against
same mistake they already made, and yeah, right.
exactly because he'll be 85 and
That's
he's out of
pretty
jail
tough
again.
at this point,
You know?
right?
Yeah. So I think that the world has been rubbed raw with this situation. And I think that most litigators are saying, you know what, that's a lot of work. And
I think it's getting
you
to
may
the
die
point with
before we get
OJ
to.
now. If you hear something about OJ, it's like, yeah, him again. You don't want to. I think it's getting to
Yeah.
that point with Cosby, and it's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't care about it anymore.
Yeah. I think, he went to jail, not the way people may have wanted him to, but he'll never, I mean, look at OJ. Has OJ ever been able to recover?
Oh,
It's
no.
now been almost 25 years, 26 years, I think. He's never had the kind of career that he had. Nobody's ever wanted to interview or talk to the guy.
But he's a free man. That's, the bottom
Is
line.
he? I thought he was in jail for that other thing. Did he
No,
get
he's been
out?
out of that. Yeah, he's been out of that for a while. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I haven't been paying
He got
attention.
released from that. Yeah, he's out.
Yeah. So I mean, now. I mean, again,
But he's an
what kind
old
of
man
career
at his age. Nobody cares. Yeah, but
right. Well, even if they did, what can he do where people's going to say, yeah, I want to pay you to
well,
do
like I
X.
said, Cosby's launched a campaign. If you look at his social media, they're launching a campaign to clean up his image. So, what do you think his legacy is? Do you think he can win people back over, or do you think people have decided, hey, he's allegedly a monster, he's a rapist, he's a creep, or hey,
there's got to be
he's innocent? Nobody's changing their mind.
I think some people will. I think some people have always supported him. I think maybe there might be people that realize that, hey, he's got a mental illness and look at it that way, where maybe a different avenue should have been used to take care of this situation rather than put him in jail. Maybe, put him into some type of, sex addict rehab center or mental illness, situation, rehab situation. So, do I think there's always going to be people that think he was guilty, even if he never went to trial, there would have been people that thought he was guilty. And there's going to be people. The question is, how many of those people can he win over, and how many of those people have enough influence to help us to help?
You made a good point. I saw an interview with a mother. Her son went to prison for murdering someone. And she said, okay, he murdered someone, but they just threw him in prison and forgot about him. He's never going to get the help that he needs to cure that mental illness. They just forgot it. So, Cosby, I doubt he'll ever seek the help he needs at 83. I mean, he's probably going to die with that mental illness if he has one, right?
Probably. I would say probably. It's hard to tell. We don't know. He might be getting counseling for it now.
Yeah.
Cosby being such a public figure, I know it's been a struggle to keep regular things that you and me would keep private, because there's always somebody prying into your business. So, it'll be, there's going to be questions that will never get answered. And these are some of them.
He's never going to get back to where he was, no matter what.
No,
he may win some people back, he may lose some, but he'll never get back to where he was. All right.
Yeah, he'll never be able to have the legacy he once had before the trial. All
right. Well, we're getting to the end of the podcast here, Bruce. We've talked for almost an hour about it, I guess. My take from the podcast would say Cosby put himself in a bad situation. The victims put themselves in a bad situation. Something bad happened. I'd say whether you're a woman or a man, don't put yourself in a bad situation, and there's less chance something bad would happen. That'd be my take. What's your take on the whole thing?
I agree, actually. I mean, I'm of a mind that, like I said earlier, I believe in personal responsibility. Don't be an idiot. If you see yourself getting into a bad, situation, walk away. If you've got that one, I had a friend of mine. His ex-wife was she had mental illness, but she had one of those things where she would provoke and provoke and provoke and provoke, and then once he responded, she would say, "Oh, look what he did. He did this to me." Not saying the fact that she provoked the living crap out of him because they got divorced. So if you're in a bad situation, the best thing to do is to separate yourself from that situation ASAP. If you don't, you're partly responsible for whatever happens. Okay. Should anybody be forced to have sex against their will? Of course not. Should anybody put themselves in that position? No. But we've all heard about the drunk girl at the party. Okay. What happens to the drunk girl at the party? If there's a decent guy there, he may take pity on her and get her the heck out of there. Or there may be a bunch of bad guys there who
Take advantage.
take advantage of that. And that's really what it's all about. It's about forethought and common sense.
All right. So there it is. You've heard about our thoughts on Bill Cosby. Bruce, I want to thank you for being on Funny Like Clown podcast, and I wish you the best of luck with your podcast On the Rocks. For more Bruce Chester, tune him in on his podcast.
Thank you. Yep. Fridays we're on Spotify, and just do a search for On the Rocks or Scott's On the Rocks Politica, and you'll get there. So.
All right. Thanks again for being on. We'll see you on the road soon, buddy.
You betcha. Take care,
Right.
Dennis.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye now.